everyone and welcome back to my channel Science is Fun. In my last video I talked about light. In today's video we're going to discuss about a completely new topic of physics, that is force. I think you all might have heard of force, right? So now I'll be saying the definition of force. So what is force? Force is nothing but a push or a pull acting on a body. Whenever an object moves, force must be involved. So this push or pull is known as force. So now I'll be talking about the formula to calculate force, and then I'll be saying about the units of force. So the force can be calculated as force is equals to mass times acceleration, and by using variables we can write it as F is equals to ma, where m is mass and a is acceleration and F is force. Now let's discuss about the SI unit of force. I think you all might have heard of Sir Isaac Newton. He he researched a lot about force and developed the laws of motion. So the SI unit of force is Newton for the honor of the scientist Sir Isaac Newton. The SI unit is Newton and it is represented by the variable capital N. There are other units of force also, like in the CGS unit system it is dyne. There are also many types of forces depending upon the acceleration produced and the contact between two surfaces or objects. So, depending upon the acceleration produced, forces are classified into two types, that is balanced and unbalanced force. If a set of forces acting on a body or an object produces a zero acceleration in it, then it is said to be balanced force. So if it produces zero acceleration, it means that the object will not move, and if the object does not move, it means that the force is zero. That's nothing but 0 Newton. Now, unbalanced force. If a set of forces acting on a body produces a non-zero acceleration, it is called as unbalanced force. This non-zero acceleration can be deceleration or acceleration. That is nothing but the object will move. The force can either be negative or positive, like -4 Newton, 2 Newton, and many other examples are there. Now, let's discuss about types of forces depending upon their contact between two objects. So first one is contact force. I think you all can guess by the name contact force that it means there will be a physical contact between two objects when the force is being applied. So examples of contact forces are like muscular force and frictional force. Now what is muscular force? The force exerted by the muscles of our body is called as muscular force. For example, when I lift a book or I take my bag to school, those are examples of muscular force. Now, frictional force. The opposing force exerted by one surface over the another due to the relative motion between two surfaces in contact is called as frictional force. As I said earlier about balanced and unbalanced force, now I'm going to show it with the help of a diagram. So I have said earlier that balanced force is when a set of forces acting on a body produces a zero acceleration in it. That means that the object will not move. So there are two scenarios. I'll be explaining the first scenario. In the first scenario, this is the object and the object is at rest, and there will be a set of forces acting. Here the set of forces are, one force is from this side, that is a 4 Newton, and the other force is from this side, and that's again a 4 Newton. So the net force acting on the body can be calculated as the difference between the magnitudes of two forces. So it will be 4 Newton minus 4 Newton, that's 0. And if there is zero force acting on it, it means that it will not produce any acceleration, and if there is no acceleration, it means that the object will not move. It will be at rest. Now the second scenario is when this object is in motion with a constant velocity. So this object is moving with a constant velocity v. and two forces of equal magnitude are acting from both sides. So as they are of equal magnitude, 4 Newton and 4 Newton, the net force can be calculated as 4 Newton minus 4 Newton, that is again 0 in here. So if the force acting is 0, there will be a 0 acceleration in this object. That means its velocity will not be affected. Now, let's come into unbalanced force. So in unbalanced force, as I've said earlier, it is when a set of forces acting on a body produces a non-zero acceleration in it. That means it can be negative or positive. So this is the diagram of it. Let's take this side as positive and this side as negative. And this is the object which is at rest. Two forces are acting on this. This side it is 5 Newton and from this side it is 3 Newton. And as I said earlier, the net force can be calculated as the difference between the magnitudes of two forces. So now the net force will be 5 Newton minus 3 Newton, that is 5 minus 3, 2 Newton. So as it is a non-zero number, it means the object will move. There is a certain acceleration happening in this object, and the direction will be towards this side because 5 Newton is greater and this force is being applied to this side. So hence the net force will be acting on this side. Earlier I explained about unbalanced and balanced force. Now I will be explaining about contact force, which I explained before to you, and now I am going to explain about frictional force, that is a part of the contact force, in a bit detail. So what is contact forces? From the name you can understand that contact forces are applied when there is a contact between two surfaces. And there are two types of contact force, that is the muscular and frictional force. Muscular is easy to understand, so I don't need to explain it in diagram. So I am going to explain frictional force. So as you can see in this diagram, this is the object and the object is in motion because a force is being applied, and this is a force of friction. This is the surface. Now from this diagram you can understand that frictional force or force of friction is the opposing force. This force is opposing this force. So in a very detailed manner we can write that the opposing force exerted by one surface over the another due to the relative motion between two surfaces in contact is called as frictional force. As frictional force always opposes the normal force, it always acts in the opposite direction of the normal force. So you can see here that the normal force is acting to this side, and as the force of friction opposing that force, it is acting to this side. Now I will be saying the formula to calculate the frictional force. I will be telling you later how to calculate it. As of now you can only see the formula. So the formula is frictional force is equals to mu times normal force. Here this cursive F represents the frictional force, mu, that's a Latin letter used in physics, represents the coefficient of friction, and N is nothing but the normal force. I will be explaining in all these in detail in my upcoming videos.